Hello, hello. Welcome back. We're here with episode 13 of Three Mike Sports. We are on the day after here of the National Basketball Championship for NCAA Division I men's basketball. We had a great game between the Wisconsin Badgers, Duke Blue Devils. Duke ended up taking the victory, 68-63. Tight game all the way through. What'd you guys think of it?
Well, you know what? I really thought it was an interesting game. The matchup everyone was looking forward to was going to be Jahlil Okafor versus Frank Kaminsky. And honestly, I thought Kaminsky completely outplayed Okafor. And so if a lot of people looked at their two stat lines, I think he outscored Okafor by 11 points, out-rebounded him by 7 rebounds or something. If people were just to look at those two stats, I think they would assume Wisconsin would have won that one. But it was a different story because Duke had the superior guard play.
Yeah, and Jahlil Okafor didn't have the kind of performance we expected from him. You look at, he only pulled down 3 rebounds the whole game, and 0 of them were on the defensive side. If you not pull it, we saw Wisconsin came through a lot of second chance points. Sam Decker had a few putbacks. That really got Duke into some trouble. But of course, we saw Grayson Allen come to play in the second half to dig him out of that hole.
Okafor didn't have a big game, but he did play an important role there in the second half. He came on the floor after subbed in for who came in to replace him? Was it
Emil Jefferson?
Right. Emil Jefferson comes in, subs in, puts up 6 points immediately, grabs a couple of boards, brings Duke right back into the game. That's the kind of play you need out of your star players.
Yeah, I thought the biggest surprise from this one was the play of Sam Decker. He had come off probably the 3 best games of his career against UNC, Arizona, and then Kentucky, and he was disappointing tonight. 0 for 6 from the three-point line. I think he was 8 for 10 from the three-point line in the last 2 games. Really surprising stuff. Yeah, it was disappointing. I thought the story was definitely you could say Grayson Allen maybe pitched the 7th inning. Then Tyus Jones came in, he pitched the 8th, and then Okafor came back in with the 4 fouls. He had 2 big buckets, and he sort of closed the game out for Duke.
Yeah, if you want to look at baseball metaphors, Grayson Allen's kind of the setup man there before Tyus Jones closed it out. But going back to Sam Decker, Wisconsin, I think they needed him to have a good performance in this game. As you said, he went 0 for 6 from beyond the arc. It looked like he was just a little nervous about playing on the big stage, national championship game against Duke in front of so many people. It seemed like just the nerves got to him.
Right. I'd like to go back to something I said last week's show. We were talking about this Wisconsin-Duke game, as I think both Aiden and I predicted would be the outcome of the tournament. We'd have a Wisconsin-Duke final. I said that Wisconsin was going to have to shoot the ball, 3-ball exceptionally well for them to have any kind of success in this game. Just didn't happen. 33% from behind the arc, still respectable, but not that kind of hot shooting we've seen from them this tournament.
Yeah, all their games they've had to rely on the 3-point shooting. They wouldn't have beat Kentucky without it. They would not have beat Arizona without a crazy performance from Sam Decker. They've relied on the 3-point shooting, and it didn't come through for them on Monday night.
Yeah, that's right. You could probably look at their 3-point percentage and their field goal percentage in general as the reason they dropped both games to Duke. Obviously, the matchup earlier this season in Madison, same story. I think there's something about what Duke was doing on the defensive end. They were basically playing a sort of matchup the zone. They were switching everything, and that set up some obvious mismatches for Wisconsin, and they were spending a lot of the time trying to exploit those mismatches. And I think that sort of got them out of their rhythm. Normally, they're a team that likes to move the ball a little more, a little too much dribbling from them. I think that probably what led to the lower field goal percentage.
Yeah, nothing against Frank Kaminsky. He's a great player, but he really seemed to be forcing the issue. They were trying to get that mismatch. A lot of times he did get mismatches, but then he'd try and drive, then they'd send someone to help, and he'd have to kick it back out, and they'd have to restart their offense. That was a big problem for Wisconsin offensively. But really, the deciding factor of this game was the play of Tyus Jones, the freshman guard. Just an unbelievable performance. To me, he really reminded me of Trey Burke for Michigan a few years back. Even though Michigan didn't win the national championship game, I remember Trey Burke would hit shots that look impossible, and that's what Tyus Jones did last night.
Yeah, I think they're both really similar players in that they're sort of old-fashioned point guards. They're pass-first guys, but when the team needs a big basket, they're sort of the guy to go to. Tyus Jones, he hit 2 big 3-pointers off the dribble in the last couple of possessions. Really clutch play from him last night.
Yeah, and 7 for 7 from the free throw line, was not affected at all by the big stage.
Yeah, I love that 3-ball he hit falling into the paint there. Question I have for you guys: do you think Jones was worthy of the MVP?
Definitely, yes. it was the Final Four most outstanding player is what he got, and he clearly was the best player for Duke. I have no problems with that.
Yeah, he was the best player for Duke in the Final Four, but if you look at what got them there, you have to look at the play of Justice Winslow. A little bit of a quiet night last night, but he had 11 points and not too quiet. But he's a player, especially in the Sweet 16 in his hometown of Houston, who really played well throughout the tournament. Another guy you got to look for.
Yeah, and Quinn Cook is another guy I love on Duke. He didn't have a big game either, just 6 points. But he's their senior. He's the captain of the team. I've really been impressed with him all tournament. He's got a good chance to be playing in the NBA.
How'd you guys feel about the officiating last night?
There were some questionable calls. There was that, obviously, the play where the ball was tipped out of bounds. It looked like it went off. I believe it was Justice Winslow's finger, but they gave Duke the ball anyway. I wasn't too upset with the officiating, but it could have used improvement.
Yeah, there were a couple of bad calls. One where you already touched on that one with it hitting Justice Winslow's fingertip, and then another one where he stepped out of bounds, and the refs didn't notice that. I mean, that's a tough one. Earlier in the second half, there were two plays. One they called one a charge, and then they called a block the next possession. I thought those should have been the other way around. I thought the first one was a block and the second one a charge. But I think the pretty much evened out except for down the stretch. A couple of those calls about Winslow. It's unfortunate, but ultimately I don't think it decided the game. I think Duke was the superior team down the stretch, and I think that's what we saw.
I'd agree with that, but I also look at officiating through the Final Four. It was not pretty. I wasn't not impressed at all with the officiating in the Wisconsin-Kentucky game. I thought they gave the officiatings were bad both ways, but I think they really gave Wisconsin a few calls that really helped them edge that one out.
Yeah, that was an interesting matchup. Maybe we can talk a little bit about that. A lot of people thought this Kentucky team was unbeatable. I certainly wasn't one of them, but I don't want to pat myself on the back too much. But I was surprised mostly by the play of Sam Decker. It really shouldn't have surprised me. He's a phenomenal player, but he was big in that game for them. I was also surprised by Karl Anthony Towns. He's a guy who would have liked to see a little bit more consistent play throughout that game. I don't know what you think about him.
Yeah, Karl Anthony Towns is a great player, but it wasn't a great game for him. I think he's going to be a top 10 pick in the NBA draft. And one big factor, I think, from the Wisconsin-Kentucky game was Bronson Koenig for Wisconsin. He came in. We talked about Sam Decker and Frank Kaminsky, but Bronson Koenig hit a few big threes, really got the momentum on Wisconsin's side.
Yeah, he's really a big-time player for them. If we're looking at Kentucky, I was reading an article today, obviously, about the preseason rankings going into next year, and they had Kentucky in the number 1 spot. A lot of people think that'll depend on who turns pro. What do you think about that? Who do you think is going to be leaving for Kentucky? Because theoretically, they could return all their players and get Alex Poitras back, who they lost in December.
Yeah, I don't know who's going to be returning. Obviously, they're going to pull in a great freshman class no matter what. So I think no matter who's returning, they are worthy of number 1 overall preseason ranking. You look at who's going to leave. I think Willie Cauley-Stein's gone. I think Karl Anthony Towns gone. I think the Harrison twins will come back. I'm not sure about that, but I think they will come back. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think another guy who's probably going to be gone is Trey Lyles, the 6'10" forward from Indianapolis. About the point about the Harrison twins, I think they probably should come back. I'm not really that impressed with their play. I think they're extremely overrated, slow feet, just sort of awkward, don't really fit in any sort of position. I don't think they're great shooters. I think they should come back. I think they're going to leave just because of some of the players Kentucky has. They're two guards who they bring off the bench. Devin Booker and Tyler Ulis. I think those guys are so much better than the two Harrison twins, and because of those two guys, I think we're going to see the Harrison twins trying to move on because they don't want their draft stock to keep falling like it's going to.
I'm not sure, but I do predict that they will come back. I think there's sophomores this year for Kentucky, but I think their draft stock could improve. They are great players, and they can come up big when it comes to just dying stretch of the game. I think Andrew Harrison's a great scorer. He can get to the free throw line at any point in the game. If Kentucky needs a basket, he's always there for them.
Yeah, I'm really not a big fan of the Harrison twins game either, similar to Aiden. I think that college gives you another chance to improve. It also gives you another chance to drop your draft stock. it's kind of a trade-off. I don't think they're ready for the NBA by any means right now. I think in terms from a purely basketball development standpoint, I think it'd be in the best interest of the Harrisons to stay at Kentucky for another year, play for Coach Calipari there, and see what happens.
Yeah, that's a good point. If you start to look at some of the other guys we're going to see leaving, I think for Duke, Jahlil Okafor, Justice Winslow, I think those two guys are both gone. Also look at the play of Tyus Jones. A lot of people see him as a late first-round pick. I'm not sure how them winning the championship last night will affect his decision going into the draft. I would expect him to probably leave just because they won. I'm not really sure what you guys think about him as an NBA prospect.
I really like Tyus Jones. I brought it up earlier. He's similar to Trey Burke. That's the NBA comparison for him. I think he can make a good living in the NBA. I think he'll be a starting point guard, maybe not freshman, maybe not as a rookie, but in second or third year, he can be a really quality point guard in the NBA. Not sure if he's going to be an all-star.
Yeah.
And Duke's also, of course, losing Quinn Cook. Duke's losing a lot of players. We'll see next year, especially if Tyus Jones does leave. We'll see Grayson Allen, who obviously had the huge game in the national championship. Maybe we'll see him carry over. He could be the Duke's star player next year.
Yeah, that's a good point. If you sort of start to look at the NBA draft, it might be a little bit too early to get into that. But the obvious conversation is for the first overall pick, Jahlil Okafor, Karl Anthony Towns, two really strong big guys. I personally think that Frank Kaminsky outplayed both of them in the Final Four, but I think there's probably a little bit more upside with these two guys. What do you guys think? Andrew, who would you take first overall if you're a GM?
I would have to go with Okafor. He plays a little bit more of a traditional role on the team. You look at a guy like Kaminsky, he can do it. He can do it all at the college level. I'm not sure how great his post game would be in the NBA, whereas we know Okafor will be able to be successful right away just based on his size and strength. We saw them match up last night a couple of times. One play I can think of in particular when Kaminsky appeared to intentionally foul Okafor up to the rim, and he just pulled his arm straight up and got the bucket and headed to the line. Obviously missed the free throw, but I think that the size and strength of Okafor makes him a much better NBA prospect right now than Kaminsky.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think Okafor is the first overall pick. And the thing about Kaminsky, I think he's sort of similar to a young Andrea Bargnani, and we all know how that worked out. And obviously he's older. He's an older guy. He's 22, I believe, compared to Jahlil Okafor and Karl Anthony Towns, younger than Frank Kaminsky. That's another upside. Possibly get a few extra years for an NBA team out of Okafor.
Yeah, you know what? I also think when you're evaluating these guys, you look at the play of Frank Kaminsky. That's what you're going to get when you draft him. Whereas with Okafor and with Karl Anthony Towns, there's still so much more room for improvement. When I look at Jahlil Okafor, it's sort of scary. He reminds me so much of Tim Duncan, possibly with a little bit more athleticism. But his footwork in the low post, all the moves he has, he's really outstanding. Maybe going off the sort of traditional pick. If you're looking at a big guy with upside, I also think you got to look at Willie Cauley-Stein. This guy is just a freak athlete. They say he can defend all 5 positions, and he really can. 7 feet tall. He's really made some huge steps over the past couple of years. I think he could be a phenomenal NBA pick.
I totally agree with that. You look at him, he's 7 feet tall, and sometimes he's out there looking like a small forward, carrying the ball. As you said, he can defend anyone, including the point guard even. I think he's the best defensive player in the country in college basketball this year. He'll be a high pick this year.
Yeah, I just wanted to get your guys' opinion on Calipari being named Naismith Coach of the Year.
Yeah, I thought it's probably the right pick. A lot of people say I think you can't forget that recruiting is definitely a part of coaching, and Calipari has been one of the best recruiters over the past couple of years. He and Coach K are probably the 2 best there is out there right now. And also what he's done with just all the McDonald's All-Americans, they have all these top players, and he's been able to convince them to cut back. He convinces them to cut back on their minutes. They're not going to score as many points, but it's all for the betterment of the team. Unfortunately, they couldn't finish off that perfect season. But if you look at their season as a whole, what they were able to do is really phenomenal, I think.
Yeah, it's hard to pick anyone else but John Calipari, especially when the decision was made when Kentucky was unbeaten. But yeah, Calipari has been a great coach in the college ranks for the last few years, and he's going to be among the coaching legends soon.
Yeah, you look at this from the player standpoint, who are coming in, young high school seniors coming in to play Kentucky. And you know you're probably not going to start your first year unless you're one of those freak athletes like this year. Mm-hmm. But you know that every year they're going to have so many guys go in the draft. It's just a matter of time before you get the opportunity to step up and and play Division I basketball at one of the best programs in the country.
Yeah.
I wouldn't see why not.
Yeah, Kentucky and Duke are both sort of turning into those sort of basketball factories. By far, they have the two most players in the NBA right now. It's not even close, really.
Yeah, just wondering if you guys watched any baseball over the last couple days.
Well, I saw a bit of the Jays opening game against the Yankees. The season started Sunday night with the Cardinals getting the win over the Cubs. I'm really excited for this baseball season. It should be a good year. I think the Jays have a good shot to go 162-0. Not really.
Just Patrick, you talked about a little bit about that opening day game between the Cards and the Cubs. John Lester, obviously a big offseason signing for Chicago this year. Do you think he really has that potential to be that number one shutdown ace that the Cubs need?
Yes, I do. I think he's proven himself. Not every year, but he's had a number of really good years when he was in Boston, especially. And I think you can't be too worried about one start. So I think the Cubs should still have confidence in John Lester moving forward. He's one of the best pitchers in the league.
Yeah, I totally agree. You can't judge a guy off one start. It's a long season. Got a lot of games ahead. I think John Lester is one of the best pitchers out there.
Right. I'd argue that they might have overpaid a little bit for him, but you got to do what you got to do these days. And the Cubs are focused on winning. It's been way too long for that city of Chicago. Obviously went out and got Joe Madden. Do you think that hiring of Joe Madden will make a huge impact?
No, I do not think managing in baseball is a big important factor. I don't think the Cubs are going to be a legit threat this year, even though they've got John Lester. I don't think that Joe Madden hiring is going to make much of a difference.
Yeah, I completely agree. I would make the argument that who's managing your baseball team, no offense to the managers out there, has little to no impact on the outcome of the game. I really think that's a pretty overrated aspect of the MLB.
I'm gonna have to disagree with both of you guys here. Actually, I don't think that the Rays would be anywhere if they never had Joe Madden as their manager. They would not have had a chance to make that World Series run they did back in 2009. Obviously, they have Evan Longoria, and they're known for having a good pitching staff, but that's only because they've been developed. And I look at their lineup and the way that Madden fields his teams. Obviously, he was one of the first managers to implement the shifts that we see so much today. He was kind of a trailblazer in that sense. He also started a new trend. I don't know if this is really going to catch on of when you have your pitcher batting in the lineup. He's been hitting them eighth, which he did for opening day this year. He had Lester batting eighth in spite of his 0 for 36 career batting average. It's stuff like that changes the game and takes not so great teams to average teams and average teams to good teams. And that's how I feel about Joe Madden. Another side story that came out of that opening day game was the Cubs didn't have Chris Bryant, young sensation. Patrick, what do you think about that?
Well, Chris Bryant obviously had a huge spring training, batted over 400, hit a lot of home runs. He's going to be a great prospect. I believe they didn't have him because there's some sort of contract. There's some sort of thing in his contract that they can avoid paying him some money if they don't call him up immediately. But he'll be up soon, probably before April's over, and he's going to be a great MLB player. Yeah,
what you're alluding to there was how the MLB service time works in these players' contracts. So after six years of service in the MLB, you're eligible to become a free agent. So essentially, by leaving him in AAA for another 12 days, gives the Cubs an extra year he's under their control for another year. And I think it was kind of a shame, seeing as it was such a big spectacle. Opening night, Cubs Cardinals, one of the oldest rivalries in all of Major League Baseball. And we didn't get to see one of the top players in the game who had just had such a fantastic spring. Everybody was all excited about him. Chris Bryant started to become a household name, and then we don't get to see him playing for the Cubs. It was real disappointing in my opinion. It was bad for baseball. Obviously, the Cubs had to do what they had to do. I know anybody would give up 12 days for a year. Not to sound too much like our sister show, the Power Hour down in Maine, but I think it was really bad for baseball. Any other opening day games that stuck out to you?
Well, the only game I really watched was the Jays-Yankees game on Monday. It was interesting to see the Jays really roughed up Masahiro Tanaka in the third inning, putting up 5 runs, including an Edwin Encarnacion home run. It was an interesting game to watch. I was impressed by the Jays.
Yeah, I thought the Jays looked really great, but I would caution all the fans out there. You can't really get too excited after one game. It's a really long season. I mean, it's great to see them playing well, but let's not jump to any conclusions here.
Yeah, but I was also impressed with Drew Hutchison. A little controversy with him starting opening night, obviously without Marcus Stroman. They want to save Ari Dickey for some indoor games. But so they put Hutchison in there, and he did have a good showing. Only went 6 innings, but only allowed 3 hits in those innings, only 1 earned run. That was off that home run. So I was impressed with Hutchison, and that's reason for good thoughts from Jays fans.
Yeah, going into the season here, I was really excited about the prospects that the Blue Jays had coming out of their bullpen, one of which being Miguel Castro, a young player. I believe he's from the Dominican, absolute smoke thrower. A little bit of a funky delivery, runs the ball up into the upper 90s, hit 99, maybe 101 a couple of times. But he made his debut, major league debut yesterday. Pitched amazing. I believe he went 1 1/3, no hits, no walks, and might have struck out 1. But Aaron Loup also pitched well. I'm a big Aaron Loup fan. Anytime you can get a lefty with a little bit of a weird arm slot, they tend to have success. I think that the Blue Jays bullpen is one of the best in not just the AL East, but the big leagues this year. And it's something exciting to look for.
And we make sure you check out our YouTube page. We've got exclusive footage of Miguel Castro pitching from behind the plate. It's good footage. Just check it out.
Phenomenal footage.
Right. If you want to see one of the best sliders in the game right now, check out that video. Miguel Castro spring training versus the Orioles. You can find on our YouTube page. One other performance that I'd like to just highlight before we move on here from opening day was Sonny Gray's 8-inning, 1-hit performance. I'd like to apologize to Sonny. He's on my fantasy baseball team, but I left him on the bench for the week. I don't know why I did that, but he had a no-hitter through 8. It was broken up, ground ball through the right side, but that was the only hit he gave up. Walked 1, struck out 3. Just another great performance from another Vanderbilt pitcher.
Yeah, great performance for Sonny Gray. He's a great young pitcher. He's got a bright career, and he could be a possible Cy Young candidate.
Yeah, I hear a lot of people talk about Sonny Gray as not quite the ace, like a number 1 kind of ace guy. I totally disagree with all of that. He's got all the tools it takes to be a successful big league pitcher. Great velocity, solid mechanics, knows how to throw the ball in the zone. Has great success right now. All right, so I guess that makes it time for quick picks here.
NBA playoff race.
NBA playoff race. All right, so NBA playoff race.
Pulled up the standings right here. I thought you were going to take that.
Okay. Yeah, that's my bad.
Yeah.
Clearly don't do well with taking hints. So NBA playoff race heating up. Most teams, I guess, headed into the final stretch. Well, all teams headed into the final stretch. I guess we got 5 or 6 games left for most teams here. Some clear. I think we've got 5 out of the 8 Eastern Conference teams have clinched. Bucks, Nets, Celtics still haven't clinched. Pacers and Heat still in the race. What are you guys looking for here?
Yeah, the race is really heating up. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch, particularly in the East. You're right. One thing I think is pretty cool, Miami Heat have lost 4 in a row. They just completely took themselves out of the playoff race. It's going to be interesting to watch the Celtics and the Pacers battling for that 8th spot, especially with Paul George coming back into the lineup. That's huge for the Pacers. He could really give them a spark. Also, I'm looking at the Raptors and the Bulls in those 3-4 spots. Raptors 1 game back. There's a huge difference between 3 and 4 right now because 4 is playing the Wizards and 5 is playing the Bucks. I think those 2 teams are so far apart in terms of the quality of play. If you're playing Washington, you got to worry about John Wall, Marcin Gortat. I think it'll be huge for the Raptors if they can make up that ground and get into the 3 spot.
Yeah, but the other thing we talked about last episode is the possible second-round matchup, which – the Cavaliers, I think, are a much more dangerous team than the Hawks at this point of the season, which is why there is some reasons to be okay with 4th spot. I think it's still worth it. It's not worth it to try and lose games. They still should fight for that 3rd spot. Another team that is impressive down near the bottom of the stands, Brooklyn Nets. They're coming on hot at the end of this year. If they can move up into the 6th spot ahead of Milwaukee Bucks, they could be a possible team to maybe pull an upset in the first round.
Yeah, I really like looking at the last 10 games the teams have played going into the playoffs. look at a team like the Hawks are only 5-5. I think the two hottest teams in the East right now have to be the Cavs and the Nets. Both of them are 8-2 in their last 10 games. The Nets could be a dangerous matchup. If the season ended today, we got those two teams playing each other in the first round. That could be a surprisingly fun matchup to watch. It's a rematch of the second round matchup in the playoffs last year.
Yeah.
And then if we go over to the West, arguably the more exciting thing to watch. It's going to be interesting. The Thunder and the Pelicans battling for that last spot. Pelicans just half a game back of the Thunder right now. Both of them are playing pretty well right now. It's going to be interesting to watch.
Yeah, the Thunder have hit a little bit of a cold streak here. Lost their last lost 5 of the last 10. I could really see the Pelicans coming back here. But the Thunder do have some of the best players in basketball. It's kind of shocking to see them in the 8th spot.
Yeah, and with the way Russell Westbrook's played, not recently, but towards the end of the season, so many triple-doubles, it's hard to bet against the Thunder. I think the Thunder will get into the playoffs ahead of the Pelicans. I don't think they'll have a chance against the Golden State Warriors in the first round, though.
Yeah, a lot of people just sort of see that as a race to who gets to lose to the Warriors in the first round of the playoffs. I think if you're talking about momentum, playoffs are all about who has the momentum going into it. And we got to talk about the Spurs. They absolutely destroyed the Warriors at home this past weekend. I thought that's really interesting to watch. This is a team that Greg Popovich admittedly doesn't care too much about the regular season. He wants all his guys healthy going into the postseason, and that's exactly what they have. I think this is the game against the Warriors was scary also when you're looking at the Spurs, because I think the big three, Tim Duncan, Tony Parker, and Manu Ginobili combined for just 12 points in that game. That's the fewest they've combined for in the past. I don't know how long they've been playing together, but forever. It's scary to see. There's so many young faces on the Spurs right now. Talk about a guy like Kawhi Leonard. He had like 8 steals. These guys could be a scary team come playoff time.
Yeah, look in the West, there's not much of a difference between number 2 and number 6. The Spurs are coming in on a 7-game win streak currently. Kawhi Leonard obviously was the Finals MVP last year. The Spurs have young talent. Everyone makes jokes about them being so old, but the Spurs are definitely a team you can't count out.
Right, something I love to see come postseason time. You got the experienced coach at the top, Greg Popovich, who's had so much playoff success, and then you've got the young talent and the veterans who kind of balance out together. They're one powerful group, one force to be reckoned with. I'd say the Spurs are come playoff time.
Okay.
Quick picks?
Yeah, you guys ready for some quick picks now?
Of course.
All right, well, let's pick that Women's National Championship game tonight. We've got the University of Connecticut Huskies taking on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Aiden, I know who you got in this one, but why don't you tell everyone?
It's going to be a really exciting game to watch. A lot of people, when they look at the brackets, they just sort of pencil UConn in going all the way. And, it's probably fair. They're really a bit of a dynasty. But I think over half their losses in the past 8 years have been at the hands of the Fighting Irish. You got to look at a player like Jewel Lloyd for Notre Dame, one of the best players in the country, in my opinion. I think when you have a player of that caliber, you really have the ability to take over. I really like the way Notre Dame moves the ball. Coach McGraw really teaches them up pretty well. I got Notre Dame in this one. Close game, though. Really close game.
Yeah, I think it'll be a close game again, but I'm going to take UConn because they've just dominated everyone they've played. They've had no problems at all. It's really Notre Dame's the only team that could have a chance to beat them. I don't think they'll get it done. UConn, I think, is going to win another national championship.
I think UConn has to be one of the best. UConn's women's basketball has to be one of the best and one of the hottest teams in all of sports in the last decade. I can't
say that?
I can't bet against the Huskies in this one. I'm gonna go with UConn.
Quickly, Patrick was just talking about the sort of experience in playing with close games. You mentioned UConn really hasn't been tested. I think you got to expect that this is going to be a close game, and if it is, the advantage has got to go to Notre Dame. They've got that sort of experience in close games. I really like the Irish, I got to say.
I wouldn't be surprised if UConn wins by 10-plus points.
That's fair.
Wow. All right, so let's move to the ice now. We've got the Boston Bruins visiting the Washington Capitals this Wednesday. Aiden, who you got?
I've pretty much been accustomed to just picking the home teams in the NHL because I really don't know all that much. But that hasn't been working out too well for me, so I'll take the Bruins on the road.
Yeah, they're both teams fighting in the playoff race. I'll take Washington in this game. Alex Ovechkin recently got his 50th goal. The Capitals they're a strong team, a lot of good players. I think Ovechkin will carry them to a win. Washington
obviously has the better record going into this one, and they're at home. But I'm going to have to side with the Bruins on this one. As I've said multiple times, I love that beat you up, bully kind of mentality these Boston Bruins play with. It's not fun for the opposition. I'm taking the Bruins in this one. All right, so let's head out to the Diamond now. We're picking the weekend series between the Boston Red Sox headed to Yankee Stadium. Aiden, who you got in that series?
Could be a fun series to watch. I'm going to be glued to the TV for that one. I'll take the Red Sox.
I'll take the Red Sox too. Some big offseason signings. I think the Red Sox will get it done. The Yankees haven't looked great. Masahiro Tanaka, their ace, had a rough opening start. I got the Red Sox.
Yeah, the Yankees just have not been the same since they lost Alex Rodriguez with all these drug allegations. Red Sox, big offseason signings. They're looking really good. I'm going to go with the Sox in this one.
Well, Alex Rodriguez is back now.
Yeah, what was he batting? Seven hole the other day? I think it's the first time since his rookie season or something like that. He's in the bottom half.
It's interesting.
Yeah. All right, well, that's our show for today. Thank you so much for listening, tuning in, whatever you want to call it. And until next time, stay up 3 Mics Nation.